Here are a few extra extensions in the neuropharmacology unit. So we've talked about drugs already, we've talked about stimulants, and we've talked about depressants, types of drugs. We've also talked about the idea of slow-acting neurotransmitters. And those are neurotransmitters that don't just go from one neuron to the next neuron, but they actually diffuse around and can affect a whole bunch of different types of neurons at the same time. We think that this drug, Ecstacy, cool initials, MDMA, we think that ecstasy acts like slow-acting neurotransmitters, such as serotonin or dopamine, and they can actually last in the brain longer than some other substances. So just a little side fact for you to know that ecstasy is an example of a slow-acting neurotransmitter, and also something that you should probably stay away from. So I think this was also mentioned in previous videos, but endorphins are certain types of hormone proteins that are secreted by the pituitary gland, and they act as painkillers, and they help you to not feel pain, and they can be secreted under different kinds of circumstances. So obviously you have pain receptors. They're endings of sensory neurons that send impulses to the brain that tell us that something is not good and there is some pain, and you need to check your body out or check yourself before you wreck yourself. I don't know if people still use that phrase anymore. Endorphins, sometimes they're there to help us to be able to fight off the pain so we don't feel it, because under certain circumstances, that pain's not going to kill you, so you need to be as focused as possible. We often take painkiller drugs as well too. If I have a headache, I'll take some headache medicine. I know I'm not going to die from that headache, but I need that to go away, and then so I don't really need my body's mechanism of telling me that I'm experiencing pain when I know it's just going to go away because I'm probably just dehydrated. The use of anesthetics in health sciences are a fantastic thing. When you go to the dentist, they can give you a shot so that all that drilling into your teeth to fill your cavities is not going to cause too much pain, because that drilling will stimulate some nerve kind of pain receptors like these guys, and rather than giving you a bunch of pain medication, they'll give you local anesthetics. So they're chemicals that are injected into you, or you can inhale these, or they can be delivered in many different ways to help mess up your sensory perception and blocks off some of that transmission from your central nervous system, and you don't actually feel the actual pain. So this can be a good thing because it's usually reversible. So in other words, the feeling will come back. I've always enjoyed that situation where I go to the dentist and they numb my face, and then I get a little bit of work done, and then I have to rinse, and I have total no control of my mouth, and then I try to rinse and the water just splashes everywhere. It's fantastic. What's even better is that the dentist actually looks away, because I'm pretty sure it happens to everybody else as well too. So anesthetics are fantastic stuff. And another little simple application that goes beyond some of this stuff as well too is to understand kind of the nature of science of drug approval procedures. When you hear about fantastic news about a new drug that's being developed and you're wondering, oh my gosh, I got to get my hands on that because I just had this particular situation or disease and I need to get that fixed really, really quickly. Turns out drug approval procedures take a very long time. So you kind of want that to happen because people have to do clinical trials. They need to do statistical tests to find out if these things actually work for the wider public. If there's a statistically significant improvement in the actual condition of people from using these things. If one or two people get good and then a whole bunch of people don't, you gotta kind of decide. And sadly, the threshold mark for approving a drug is relatively low. So you'd be surprised at some of the results that some of these statistical tests generate, and you'd be thinking they actually allowed that drug to go onto market. But you know, there's also the placebo effect. So if you think it's going to help you, it can help you as well too. Patients want shorter approval processes, obviously, and obviously they will have to take more risk in those types of things. So depending on the country, you have different types of federal regulations. We want to minimize the risk as well too, and not release a drug that can actually have really harmful side effects. You got to do a lot of tests with placebo groups, and to make sure people aren't just getting better because they think they're taking the medicine when in fact they're eating M&Ms. Very rarely and only in extreme cases will kind of drug approval procedures be kind of expedited. Speaking of anesthetics, I've read a lot of news articles about this kind of stuff and a lot of research about this. Some pretty scary stuff when it comes to anesthetics, and I don't know, I'm scared that this is going to happen to me one day when I have to be put under. You've all seen it in episodes of any kind of TV show where they are in the emergency room. The doctor gives you some gas, count backwards, 10, 9, then you're asleep, then they start doing the surgery. The sad thing is that there are some reported cases where people are actually awake and aware and can fully feel the pain but don't have the ability to say anything. In general, when it's working, you should be totally unconscious with no awareness. That is the point. If necessary, you can be kept awake. In most cases, you don't want to be sitting on the table with your chest cut open while someone's working on your heart. That's probably going to be a pretty trippy experience. So they probably want to close you off and make sure you're not aware, and then you sleep, you wake up, you're like, oh, what happened? And then you see this awesome scar across your chest. So this is the scary part I'm talking about. Some cases, some reported cases of patients remaining awake may or may not feel pain. Some people saying they've stayed awake and they've heard things that the doctor was saying about their body, which is kind of embarrassing as well too. Emergency cesarean sections, when you're trying to do a C-section to remove the baby from kind of like surgical cutting. I'm a C-section baby. People say that means certain things, and that's why the way I am. Like, I didn't struggle hard to get into this world, whatever. In these types of situations, doctors may try to minimize the anesthetic that's being used. So they use something called a spinal block. They're awake, but they don't feel any pain. It's like minimal anesthetic treatment.